in this video I'm going to go through a practice technique called speed bursts. And this is not a technique that I came up with. I think it's been around for probably hundreds of years for violin and piano practice things, right? So, but the whole idea behind it is to practice as close to the tempo you're shooting for as you can, but still keep it perfect. And the only way to keep that perfect is to cut down the number of notes you're playing, right? Because if you could play the whole phrase perfectly at that speed, you wouldn't need to practice it, because then you could already play it. So the idea then is to try to keep the speed up, but you have to cut down the notes, and you sort of try to build the notes up to whatever the goal is. Alright, so to demonstrate this, let's just go through it like this short lick. It's just a pattern going up from the G string, from the 13th fret, and you're going to use the fingering 1, 3, 4, and the fret's going to be 13, 15, 16 on G, B, and E. And so it's going to be a 9-note phrase, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're going to do this with alternate picking. And let's say that's the goal tempo, right? And you know, I can already play it, but let's say I couldn't. And the way to work on that, besides doing all this real slow practice that I've gone through in the other practice technique videos, this one we're gonna, like I said, keep the tempo as high as possible or as close to the goal tempo as possible, but so we need to take away a lot of the notes. So we just start with the first 2 notes of the phrase. So we just go like this. And as you can hear, I don't do this, right? Because I want to have a pause in between so I can evaluate the results. So I'm not sitting here, you know, doing something super sloppy, because I would defeat the purpose. So the idea here is to keep the speed up as high as possible, but when I mean as possible, I mean this very speed that you can play while still being as close to perfect as you can. So that's sort of the golden rule for me when it comes to any type of technique practice, is to keep the accuracy very, very high, because that's the habit that I want to build. And then if you focus on that, the speed will come sooner or later, especially with this type of exercise. So again, you just play the first 2 notes, and if you can play those, and another reason why I don't, why I want to pause in between is that if I keep going like this, I'm gonna build up a lot of tension eventually. So I really want to evaluate what I just played, and also sort of reset my technique so I'm not building tension. All right, and then if you can do that, you add the 3rd note. Right, and if that works, you add the 4th, 5th, and then keep going like that until you can't do it anymore. Let's say you have a problem with the 5th note here. Some troubleshooting you can do, and this is actually part of the technique, for me at least, and that's to start from the note where you can't, you know, let's say it's the 5th note here that you have a problem getting to. Start on that note instead, and then you build backwards. So and it really helps to number the notes here. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then you just start on the number before the last one. So you go 4, 5. So we get 2 notes again. Right? And as you notice here, I don't start with a downstroke here, because the actual phrase that I'm practicing requires me to use a downstroke on the last note. So I don't want to do reverse picking here. So that's a really important point as well. So really keep track of your picking. It's no problem when you start on the first note of whatever lick you're practicing, because then that note's not going to change. But since the starting note, when we build backwards, is going to be different every time, you need to keep track of that. But it's not that hard. In this case, I know that I want to end up on a downstroke, so the 5th note is a downstroke, the 4th note will be an upstroke. And then at the 3rd, that would be a downstroke as well. So down, up, down. and then upstroke, and then you're back to. And this usually helps to get rid of whatever problem you had with the phrase. And if not, just go back to the regular slow practice, because then you just need more repetitions all over the fretboard, as we talked about a bunch of times in different videos. So, and for my practice here, I really try to use basically 3 methods of practice. One is very slow, so to a metronome, maybe 50 to 60 BPMs, and just go. This is called transition time, and what I do is that I wait until the last millisecond to move, so I get as short of a pause in between each note as possible, which means that I need to keep my actual transitions really sharp and fast. And that's really good because you're gonna get a better tone, and your synchronization is gonna improve like mad. So basically, let's say these are 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 4 beats of whatever you're practicing, and this is at 60 BPMs. So instead of doing this, you have note, and you have a gap, note, you have a gap. You want to do this. Still the same tempo and everything, but you want to minimize the gaps between the notes. That's it, basically. So that's a really, really good practice technique, one of my favorites. And besides that, I like to use like a medium tempo, which would be 8 notes around 50 to 80 BPMs, depending on how hard the thing I'm practicing is, right? So that would be maybe something like this. I still try to keep the transition time as quick as I can, but it probably won't be as quick as when I have some time to prepare for it, right? But I still try to keep that as much as possible. And this is the type of practice that the tempo that I use for things like moving around the fretboard, where I have a specific pattern. On and on, like that, up and down the fretboard, all over the place. And then the third mode then would be what I just showed you with the speed bursts. And then the last mode is actually something that I use quite rarely, and that would be to play through whatever I'm trying to learn up to tempo and just go for it. And whatever mistakes I make, right? And I just do that to see how close to the final product I am, and also it sort of gives me an indication of what I need to practice more. Because those sections would be, any section that's horrendous, like, all right, this really sucks, I need to spend my time here. And even though it's tempting to spend a lot of time on the parts that you actually can play pretty close to tempo, and it sounds good, and you feel like Captain Awesome, it's a huge waste of time to work on that. That's just, ego stroking time, right? And that's, for me, it has no place during my practice time. That's something I can do when I'm just playing for fun. Then, stroke away at that ego. But otherwise, just try to be this guitar Nazi, and you punish yourself by just working on the stuff that really, really hurts to play, because it's like, oh no, I thought I was good at this, and then, But that's really where the fastest road to improvement lies. All right, so, and again, when it comes to ratios here, I like to use that when I practice. So if I'm practicing for an hour, I pretty freely go between the first, second, and third way of practicing, depending on what I feel like, whatever problem I might encounter. So if I encounter something, a brick wall with the speed bursts, I need to find out what notes are giving me problems, and then make an exercise out of that, and then use the transition time, the number one way to practice, and the second way, the more medium, slow tempo, where I move that pattern all over the fretboard, right? So I get all those good repetitions in. So those 3 I just work on however I want. It might be, 33% on each, or 20, 60 or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just it's different every day. But the last part, the fourth way of practice, that's very, very infrequent. So maybe I do that, a few times each practice session just to check in where I'm at, right? But I think that's where a lot of people that come to me, a lot of students throughout the years, they have that sort of lopsided, or they might not even know about the other practice techniques I just outlined, but a lot of people seem to spend 90% of the time in sort of this just going for it mode, and that will only lead to problems in the long run, because it's like finding out all the problems, but you're not doing anything to correct them, and that's a surefire way to really develop bad habits. But the good news is that if you just turn it around and start practicing the better way, you're gonna see a huge improvement in your technique pretty much, just a few weeks. So it won't take you years to turn it around. It's sort of like if you eat really bad food, just junk food and candy all day, and then without even starting to exercise or anything, you just stop doing that and start eating healthy, you're gonna lose weight just by the fact that you're doing that without even, doing anything extra physically. And so that's not the best analogy perhaps, but it's sort of the way it usually works. So once you just start to turn around and do the good stuff, you're gonna see improvements right away. So don't feel like you've wasted your time or anything. Just be happy that you found a better way to practice. So this method then, all the the practice methods that I outlined here, they really rely upon your ability to be honest with yourself. Because if you sit around and fool yourself and be like, yeah man, this is accurate, right? It's not gonna work. So don't do that. And also, that's why I think it's a good idea to separate the practice time and just playing time. When you play, you can sit around and fool yourself all you want, because hopefully the good practice that you put into the actual practice time will be so beneficial that you will still improve, and you can't really play something enough times during just your playing time to really undo all that good work you already did. So yeah, if you have any questions at all regarding this, just post a question below and I'll try to get to it as soon as possible. Otherwise, good luck with everything and see you in the next video.